This is the Film Symbologist. In this video, I will explore a more scientific interpretation of the plot to Ridley Scott's 2012 film Prometheus. This is a continuation of the ongoing series analyzing that science fiction film. My two most recent videos in the series offered possible interpretations of the plot, one from the perspective of Greek mythology and the other from the perspective of Gnosticism. If you haven't seen the previous videos in the series, I suggest checking those out. In the Greek creation myth, the Titan Prometheus molded man from clay, and the goddess of wisdom Athena breathed life into man. Aware of our vulnerability, Prometheus steals fire from Zeus and gives it to our ancestors against the wishes of the gods. As punishment, Zeus orders the creation of Pandora, the first woman, and gives her a jar that contains all the evils of the world. When Pandora opens the jar, mankind is plagued by the jar's contents, but Pandora is able to keep hope inside the jar. This offers one mythical explanation for humanity's existential condition. In the Judeo-Christian creation story from the Bible, a loving God creates the universe and declares it good. Man is formed from dust in God's image, is animated with a soul by God's breath, and is placed in the Garden of Eden. Later, God creates the first woman, Eve, as Adam's partner. A serpent in the garden tempts Eve to eat a forbidden fruit in defiance of God, which she and Adam do. God expels Adam and Eve and their descendants from paradise. This is another explanation for mankind's existence. In some Gnostic traditions, the material universe and mankind are created by an evil demiurge. This lesser god is seen as having trapped mankind's eternal spirits in mortal bodies in a decaying world. The serpent in the garden is seen as a hero who gives secret knowledge to Adam and Eve that encourages them to rebel against the evil creator God and seek the means to escape from the bad physical world into the good spiritual realm. This is yet another explanation of man's origins and purpose. In the film Prometheus, two scientists, Shaw and Holloway, are shown presenting their research findings to members of an exploratory crew when they arrive at their destination of a distant moon world referred to as LV-223.
So you're saying we're here because of a map you two kids found in a cave, is that right?
No, not a map, an invitation.
From whom?
We call them engineers. They engineered us.
Okay, so, do you have anything to back that up? No, I mean, look, if you're willing to discount 3 centuries of Darwinism, that's... woo! But how do you know?
According to Shaw's worldview, the giant beings depicted in the ancient artifacts are the engineers, or creators, of mankind. One crew member, Milburn, who is a biologist, scoffs at Shaw's claims. He seems to believe that Darwin's theories of the origins of species and descent of man refute any claims of panspermia or possibilities of man's divine creation. Under Milburn's worldview, what are the origins of mankind? According to Darwinism, biology emerged out of chemistry through an unknown physical process. Once begun, life progressively evolved from simple to complex organisms through random genetic mutation, natural selection, and survival of the fittest. Man, like all life, comes from the dirt. We are soulless. We are not imbued with God's breath. We are not made in the image of a divine creator. We have no free will. We are beings determined by our biological program. Humans are non-player characters in the game of life. This is not a new concept. In fact, NPCs are an ancient idea that predate Darwin by millennia. In the Bible, a golem is a type of creature that, like man, is made from dust, but unlike man, does not possess agency. Golems are animated to life by mystical or magical means, often involving the incantation of sacred words. These creatures are controlled and given tasks by others to serve the others' purposes. Under both Gnosticism and Darwinism, humans are not images of a benevolent creator God. We are soulless sacks of meat controlled by our biology. We are NPCs. We are golems. We are just biological versions of androids. This may explain David's apparent disdain for mankind. He knows that we're no different from him, no more deserving of dignity, respect, or life than he is. Yet we think we're special. We think we're different from him. We believe we have souls. David and science disagrees with this belief. Man's hubris in this regard is on full display in an interaction between Holloway and David in the billiards room.
Why do you think your people made me?
We made you because we could.
Can you imagine how disappointing it would be for you to hear the same thing from your creator?
Perhaps Shaw and Milburn are both correct. Maybe mankind was engineered in some mysterious way by the beings depicted in the artifacts, and maybe these are the same beings on LV-223. And perhaps man was engineered in a way that did not imbue us with God's breath or make us in God's image. But why did the engineers create us? David implies that the engineers may have made mankind simply because they could. In Mary Shelley's 19th century Gothic horror novel, Victor Frankenstein desired to create an amazing being that would demonstrate Frankenstein's mastery over the mysteries of life and death. Once animated to life, however, Victor was horrified by his creature, which he saw as grotesque. Frankenstein abandons his creature. The creature, feeling rejected and alone, lashes out on humanity and seeks revenge against Victor. In return, Frankenstein vows to pursue and destroy his creation, which ultimately leads to Victor's death in the Arctic Circle. Maybe the engineers wanted to create incredible beings that would showcase the engineers' dominance over the material universe. The opening scene at the waterfall may depict the engineers experimenting with the creation of life. The ancient artifacts may show the engineers further experimenting on their creations. Under this view, is the black goo just another part of their experiments? According to Yannick, LV-223 was the engineers' laboratory for their experiments.
You know, before I sold my soul to corporate, I was in the military. Yeah.
Before I did that, though, I was flying sorties out of Jordan. And there's one base I was on at this building. No windows, pure steel, surrounded by a barbed wire fence. Actually, small men in white coats running in and out of it. We knew they were making something in there, and we knew it was bad. Anyway, one night, the alarm goes, and we get ordered to do a full evac, everybody out. And I'm running towards my transport, and I see these men in white coats trying to get out that building, screaming, crying for their lives. Anyway, we get in the air, and I see my CO flip open a box that he had on his lap, had a gray button on it, and he closes his eyes and he starts to pray. And then 6 kilometers out, he decides to push that button. Just because some idiot spilled something.
Now, I know it was a long time ago, but I feel the same thing happened here. Those things, those engineers, they made something they shouldn't have. And they spilled it.
If Yannick's interpretation is correct, the black goo was an experiment, and an outbreak of the goo killed the engineers in the 1st century. The goo may have led to the engineers' death, but was the black goo really the engineers' experiment? Aren't we, humanity, the engineers' experiment? Isn't Earth their laboratory, not LV-223? In the 21st century, the descendants of the engineers' experiments certainly killed them. But why were the inhabitants of LV-223 planning to bring the black goo to Earth way back in the 1st century? Mankind may not have lived up to the engineers' expectations. Their experiment may have turned out to be monstrous creatures who are capable of inflicting great pain, suffering, and destruction upon one another and our planet. Despite our depravity, the engineers may have tried to guide our development throughout history, as depicted in some of the artifacts. But still, we developed enormous empires built on conquering, raping, pillaging, enslaving, and torturing others. Some have speculated that the engineers may have sent an emissary to Earth as one final attempt to help us, but we crucified him, leaving the engineers with no choice but to destroy us. Even the engineers believed they were experimenting with something they shouldn't have been. They shouldn't have been experimenting with us. The black goo may have been the engineers' button that they were going to press to destroy Earth, their laboratory, because our ancestors, their experiment, had gotten out of control. Humanity may have been the real outbreak that caused the engineers' annihilation on their own remote world in both the 1st and 21st centuries. The LV-223 engineers, tasked with destroying mankind, may be heroes to the universe. That the engineers' efforts were stopped may be a travesty. In the story of Frankenstein, the creature mourns Victor's death and vows to put an end to its own suffering. In Prometheus, humanity's creators are apparently dead. Shall we mourn them? Shall we put an end to our own suffering? That would certainly be justified under the philosophies of nihilism and antinatalism. Nihilists reject the idea of there being any morality, knowledge, purpose, or meaning in human life. Antinatalists believe that procreation is morally wrong. As reasons for their beliefs, they cite the suffering that is present in the world, the inability to consent to being born, and the toll that people take on resources and the environment. At the film's climax, Shaw pleads with Yannick to prevent the engineer from traveling to Earth in the Juggernaut.
Sure? Is that you copy?
Yannick, listen to me. This ship is taking off.
What?
What the hell is she talking
You
about?
can't let it leave. You have to stop it. Yannick, if you don't stop it, there won't be any home to go back to. It's carrying death, and it's headed for Earth. Yannick, please believe me, please.
Under Darwinism, humanity is not deserving of Prometheus's fire, the serpent's enlightenment, or eternal life. In fact, we are not deserving of any life at all. We are deserving of death. The engineers are free to experiment upon us or destroy us at their discretion. Don't we deserve to be treated by the engineers the same way David is treated by Whalen, Vickers, and Holloway? The engineers may have had high hopes for us, but they changed their minds. Or they may have always intended to experiment on us at their whim. In any case, who are we, as creatures of the engineers, to question them? We are NPCs, golems, and monstrous creatures without souls, just like Frankenstein's creature and David. Who cares if we don't like our creators, our purpose, or our treatment? Our desires, ambitions, and beliefs don't matter. Before Shaw and Holloway present their research to the Prometheus crew, David plays a holographic recording of Wayland where he asks 3 questions.
I have spent my entire lifetime contemplating the questions. Where do we come from? What is our purpose? What happens when we die?
The interpretation of the film put forward in this video offers 3 answers to those questions. We come from the dirt and are animated to life through some physical process that has no purpose, just like our lives. Nothing happens when we die. We are not deserving of answers, enlightenment, or more life. We are deserving of death by the beings that mistakenly created us out of their own hubris and ego. Their regret leads them to try to undo their mistake and uncreate us using the black goo. Isn't this righteous? Or, since we are not deserving of life, maybe the engineers aren't either. In the same way that Darwinism tells us that humans are NPCs, it tells us that the engineers aren't titans or angels or gods. They are just other biological creatures that exist within the universe. They aren't that different from humans, and mankind isn't that far behind them technologically. Even David is, in many ways, superior to them.
Mortal after all.
With the mission to destroy humanity stalled and the engineers dead, what should mankind do? End our own suffering? Or push forward to new frontiers and the next step in our evolution? Should we seek to extend our lives or upload our consciousness into machines? In our world, transhumanists like Yuval Harari imagine that we may be able to use technology to improve human life. In the film, humanity creates new life in the form of androids, and people task these artificial people with doing the things that humans don't want to and can't do.
I can do almost anything that could possibly be asked of me. I can assist your employees. I can make your organization more efficient. I can carry out directives that my human counterparts might find distressing or unethical.
Isn't tasking androids with the grunt work of running human civilization just another empire built on slavery and exploitation? And wouldn't this make us dependent upon android labor? Isn't that risky? Perhaps there are also other ways to transcend humanity. Evolutionary biologist Brett Weinstein proposes that we hack our own programming and reprogram our apparent individualistic drive to survive and reproduce with an operating system that is instead focused on long-term collective thriving. Is this even possible?
Brett Weinstein says to Jordan Peterson, "We can no longer afford to be unaware of the evil, but dim genocidal machinations of the agenda of the genes, because now we have the capacity to destroy not just a small community, but all of humanity. But he doesn't notice is that the astounding good fortune that we, at the same time, have evolved the enlightening to unveil the evil, genetic, genocidal, impersonal, unconscious conspiracy to avoid our destruction. That's one hell of a fortuitous timing scenario in this cosmic zero-day attack, especially because no one planned it and there's no script it was even following.
Pastor Paul Vanderklay has argued that we cannot reprogram ourselves in the manner that Brett claims. Will we try to anyway? Should we be stopped? By who or what? The LV-223 engineers are immobilized, so they can't do it.
We wield incredible power. The power to transform, to destroy, and to create again. The question, of course, before us is what the hell are we supposed to do with this power? Or more importantly, one should ask, what are we allowed to do with this power? Rules, restrictions, laws, ethical guidelines, all but forbidding us from moving forward.
Maybe, as Wayland discusses in his TED Talk, we will stop ourselves with rules, regulations, and laws that restrict the type of dangerous experiments that may have killed the engineers. But as we see in the film, people like Wayland are capable of fleeing beyond the jurisdiction of those earthly laws to places like Mars, where he is free to experiment. If not regulations, what then will stop people like him? Maybe our creations will stop us, like we stopped our creators. Should we be worried about what our creations will do with us gone? Or is that none of our concern? Maybe it comes back to the question, do we deserve life?
Hey, Vickers. Hey, Vickers.
I was wondering, are you a robot?
Isn't everything a machine? Whether it's a biological machine like us and the engineers, or a synthetic machine like David? That's what Darwinism tells us. But what do you believe? Are we golems, or are we something else?
That's your scientific theory, is it, Mr. Biology?
Over the last few videos, I have laid out a few possible interpretations of the plot of Ridley Scott's 2012 science fiction film Prometheus. While there are good arguments and good evidence in favor of each interpretation, none of the interpretations I've presented thus far are foolproof. In future videos, I will present what some of the issues are with these interpretations and what countervailing evidence points to as the film's actual message. In the next video, I will take a look at humanity's biological program. If we really are NPCs programmed by our biology, what is that program and what does it compel us to do? If you enjoy content like this and would like to see more, comment down below, like the video, and subscribe to my Patreon and YouTube channel. The Film Symbologist thanks you for watching.